Okay. Good morning, one and all. So today, in this particular session, we are going to discuss your third unit introduction part. That is nothing but memory management. Okay. So in the previous sessions, what are the sessions we have taken up? We have discussed about process management. Earlier discussions were related to your process management. So how we people can means the operating system can create these multiple processes and how these processes can be scheduled so that the CPU can be allocated to these particular processes and they can complete the task within the given time. So there are multiple what we call processes can be executing simultaneously. So definitely we discussed about something called scheduling algorithms here. So using the scheduling algorithms, we try to determine how which process should be allocated to the particular CPU so that it can start performing. So that these processes cannot fight with each other and they complete their task with respect to in a sequential order. For that we have seen different scheduling algorithms. Apart from that, these scheduling algorithms, whatever we have discussed, we can implement based upon our requirement. Well, that comes with experience here. So based upon the scenarios, the way you people will be solving the problems, we'll come across to know how, which particular algorithm can be implemented for which set of processes. So that is what we have actually seen it. Now basically we are saying that these particular processes should be present in the memory for accessing. Then only we can apply the scheduling algorithm. So in order to do that, what happens here, we need to load these processes into the memory, isn't it? So when we are loading these processes into the memory, what will happen? Basically, we need to provide what means that storage. We need to provide the storage where these particular processes can be residing. And that is what, so definitely that is what we are going to discuss in this particular scenario. How we can manage that particular memory. Well, definitely here also we do have several different type of algorithms. Don't expect that we'll be using a single strategy here. Here also like scheduling, we have different algorithms. Same way here also we have different strategies as well as different algorithms. Now using those algorithms, we will be performing our operations, how that will be stored and what can be done. Okay, so here in this particular unit, what are the contents we do have? Well, this is somewhat lengthy when compared to your second and first unit. Okay, so please make concentrate here because every topic what we are going to discuss here is very important. So if you talk about the content part here, this is the overall content of your unit. Okay, so what these are the contents what we do have. So first we have something called introduction to memory management. Now in this we will be discussing about the basic requirement for the memory management. So in order to manage this memory, what are the basic requirements we do require? So that is nothing but the basic hardware because we are talking about memory. The memory is nothing but it's a physical device, right? Where we will be storing the information. So that is comes under your basic hardware. We'll see. Then we have a concept called as address binding. Well, we people usually write different kind of programs and within those programs, what we people are doing, we are simply compiling. Let us suppose you have written a C program. What do you people usually do? What are the steps? Write down the program, store it with the .c extension, then compile that program and finally execute that program. And in between, if you're having any errors, you just rectify that error, again save that program, compile it and then execute your program. Basically we are doing. Now in this address binding, we will be discussing how internally the system works when you people are executing these steps. Like first you're writing a program, storing with the .c. Some process takes place there, some kind of internal mechanism takes place that we will be focusing on here. And after that, what you people are doing? You're compiling that program. So when you're compiling that program, definitely some internal process takes place based on what means in on onto the laptop, onto the screen. What we can see is if there are any errors, that errors will be displayed. No errors, nothing will be displayed. Your program is correct, that will be displayed. But internally, some mechanism is going on, different mechanisms. What is that mechanism? That we are going to see in address binding. And then the next step, what we have here is something called logical versus physical address space. Well, this is important here because in our system, two different type of addresses are generated. This is something you can imagine as if your permanent address and your communication address. Your communication address might be different based upon the different locations, but your permanent address will be one. Maybe that is the address of your village where exactly your home is residing, isn't it? So that comes under. So that permanent address is what we call it as a physical address here, And whereas coming to the communication address, so right now you may be staying in some city. So what is the communication address for that? That comes under here logical address. And please make sure and please remember this, that whenever we people are creating the program, we can see only this communication address, this logical address only we can see. Physical address we can never see for our Lapis, because this physical address is with respect to your RAM. So RAM will have slots, isn't it? Every slot will have some address. That address is what we are calling it as physical address. And we cannot see that physical address. It is the responsibility of the operating system to map this logical address to this particular physical address. Remember that. Okay, physical address. Whenever we are writing a program, we can see the logical address of that particular program. But where it is stored in your RAM, that we cannot see it. That is what we need to see. There is a separation here. Then finally, we have something called as dynamic loading. So dynamic loading is nothing but at runtime, loading different routines or different functions that comes under dynamic. We will discuss them. So in today's session, we are going to focus on these particular parameters. These 4 parameters we are going to discuss. And the next sessions we'll discuss about swapping. Now this is one of the most important concepts here, swapping. Swapping is nothing but interchanging. Like for example, this is your disk space, your secondary storage device, and this is your RAM. Now one of the processes executing here, and after completing execution, we need to store it back from the disk. Well, there is a steps here. I will explain. We will see them in detail when we'll discuss this particular session. So in this we have standard swapping. Swapping is nothing but interchanging. Interchanging between two different processes. Like you bringing one process from disk to RAM, executing it, and from RAM to again disk. What we are doing, we are swapping it up. That's what that concept comes under here. Then the next important topic is continuous memory allocation. So how the memory is allocated to your system, within the system, how the memory is allocated or how the data is stored in your system, that we are going to discuss in this. Basically, if we take an example of watching a movie, you might be thinking, like for example, the movie is of size 1.5 GB, let us suppose. The entire 1.5 GB will be executed simultaneously. When you watch a movie without any lagging, you people can see the entire movie, right? 3 hours movie. Now what the user will have an assumption that this 1.5 GB is directly loaded into RAM. But that is not the case here. Here, this particular 1.5 GB, and moreover, when you're storing the information, if I ask you, okay, where you're storing it, will that 1.5 GB data will be stored in one location or different locations? Basically, everyone will have an assumption that, okay, it will be located in a one location. Like for example, in D drive, you're creating a movie folder, and within that you're storing. So it is located in one. But actually, that is not the case. Internally within the disk, your secondary storage device, this particular 1.5 GB will be splitted, will be chopped into different pieces of different sizes or maybe equal size. That depends upon your system. Okay, and the operating system you're using. So here 1.5 GB will be chopped into different slices, or we can call it as your pieces. And this piece might be stored somewhere else, this might be stored somewhere, and this might be stored somewhere. Who is doing that? Operating system. But whenever we are executing that movie and we are watching a movie on a laptop, you will get them in a sequential order, one after another. So it is who is actually providing them in a sequential order is nothing but it's the responsibility of operating system. Okay, because our RAM size is very less. For example, you are using 2 GB RAM and you want to play a 1.5 GB, it's highly impossible, because out of 100%, okay, maybe you might be using 1.9 GB you can use. Apart from that, 95% you are using it, remaining 4% you are leaving it up. So how the system is able to identify? Still we are able to run that program, I mean that movie. We can run on a 2 GB platform this 1.5 GB movie. Yes, we can. Maybe it will be somewhat slower or it may lag sometimes, but definitely we can execute it. Okay, but even though we don't have that much memory, but still we are able to run it, means how it is running it means it's entirely the magic of your operating system. He is the one who is loading, so it will load one by one. Well, we will just have a brief introduction, that's it. When we will discuss in depth, then I will explain in detail related to this particular concept. Next, we have segmentation. This is most important. This is related to your programs also. You people are creating programs, right? You people are writing, header files, main program. Within that, you're writing some logic, you're terminating it. So So that will be divided into pieces. As I told you before, that particular program, you have written a single page program, you have stored it with .c. But actually what happens here is that particular program will be chopped into different pieces by your operating system. That is what we call it as segmentation. Means dividing your entire program into segments, small segments, and every segment will have a link, so that whenever operating system execute that program, that everything should come in a sequential order. It's not that the print statement should come on top and the variable declaration should come on in the bottom, but no, it will be something like, this is, for example, this is your main program main. So on top of it here, you are including some header files, bracket open, declaring variables a comma b, printing some statements, logic, and then finally you're closing it. Okay. Now this is a program which you have stored with some XYZ dot C. Now what happens in segmentation is this particular program will be chopped into pieces. Maybe these header files will be chopped into separate files. This main program will be chopped into separate file. Internal logic will be chopped into separate file. Finally, the output statement might be chopped into separate file. And these files will be located in your different disk spaces. Disk space is nothing but, remember, disk is nothing but it's your secondary storage device. So here these particular program segments will be placed in different locations. But whenever you people are executing it, you are getting the output perfectly. How it is getting is the operating system will bring these pieces together in a sequential way, the way you have written it. And based on that, it will try to execute the program. Okay. And remember, operating system will bring only the binary executable file, .obj file. That is what we call, because it can't execute dot source file, C file. It can execute dot .obj. After compiling, you get this particular file, isn't it? You might have seen it when you have gone through, even for Java programming and C programming, you might have come across this. So once you're writing a program, that is what we call it as a source program, stored with the .c extension. Then what we are going to do, we will just convert that into, after compiling, the system will convert that into obj file. That is nothing but your binary file. And this is the one which the operating system will execute. So this will be chopped into pieces. Then we have the important one, the two most important topics here, paging and structure page table. Well, this page table we are going to use in our paging concepts here. Okay. So basically we have three page tables here: hierarchical paging, hash page table, and inverted page table. Now these page tables we'll be using in the concepts called as paging. So that we will discuss it. What do you mean by paging? It is nothing but like you people, if you're following some kind of textbook, for example, no, you will be having an index, and every index will consist of some page, a topic name, page, isn't it? That is what called paging here. So here, since I am telling from the beginning that whatever the program you are writing, that will be chopped into pieces, and these pieces will be stored in different locations. This is your, let us suppose, your secondary storage device. So first piece might be located somewhere here. The second piece might be located somewhere here, and the third piece might be located somewhere here. Now, how the system will come to know which piece belongs to, because in between we have other pieces also here. But these actual storage pieces or the slices will consist of information of other programs. This program is located at here, here, and here. What about these three? So this may be a separate program, another program. That is short, and one portion is here, another portion somewhere here, another portion somewhere here. So how the system comes to know, okay, when I'm executing this program, I need to get this one, and this one. So how the system is coming to know means it actually uses a paging concept. It actually maintains a table. That table consists of these particular pieces information followed with some number. That number indicates, okay, where that particular location is. From there, the operating system try to get the data and execute for you people. This is the way. So this is the overall context related to your third unit. Okay, so basically if you talk about something called paging and structure of, apart from this we have demand paging also, that is also a part of it. That comes in your second part. This, whatever you people are seeing on the screen right now, this belongs to the first part. So today we'll try to cover the basic introduction to your memory management thing. So let's begin with that. Let's have a brief introduction related to it. So basically we know that a program, whatever we are writing, okay, so a program generally stored, where exactly it is stored? Since we are talking about, we are going to discuss about memory management here, the entire focus will be on storage concepts. not on the process concept. Second unit is purely on process, not storage. Wherever, anywhere in the second unit, we did not discuss about storage, but here the main focus will be on storage. Okay, so whatever the program we people usually write up, that will be stored in the disk, isn't it, into the memory. Okay, and that memory, whatever we are placing it, placed within a process for it to run. Means what is saying exactly here, that a particular program, whichever we are writing, we are storing in a disk. Obviously, you have written a C program and you are storing it .c. Where you are storing that? Definitely, you are storing it in your secondary storage device. From there, what happens after compiling? You people are converting that into OBJ, then that will be brought into your RAM, and then it will start executing here. So basically, the part played, the role played by CPU is most important, because CPU is the one which will be executing your program. Now, what is saying exactly here? We have something called RAM, and apart from that, we have registers. If you remember, in the first unit, we discussed about the hierarchy of your memory storage. So initially, you have something called registers, then we had something called as cache, then we had something called as RAM. Well, forget about this. We will discuss in the coming slide. Now, talking about register. Now, what he's saying here is, this particular RAM and registers are together, are placed with the help of a processor. These are placed with respect to processor. Means whatever the processor we might be using, like Intel i3 processor, Core i5, dual processors, that processors actually consist of these two particular RAMs, and the processor can directly access RAM and register. So here, the CPU can directly access the RAM and register. CPU cannot directly access your secondary storage device, your hard disk. CPU can never access directly. What memory the CPU can access directly is nothing but the RAM and register in order to execute. Okay. Now here, what he's saying is this RAM and registers are of very small size. I think you people already know registers are very, very small sizes, isn't it? So here, whenever the CPU is executing it, it will first, whatever the instruction on the program we want to execute, we will first load into your RAM. Then from the RAM that will be executed. Now the program starts executing. Now based on execution part, what happens? Whatever the operands are required, whatever the operators you might be using, that will be loaded. That again has to be loaded from your secondary storage device into your RAM. And then the processing should take place, isn't it? So it becomes easy for the CPU if the entire program and the data related to that program is already there in RAM. Okay, I'll explain with the example. Let us suppose I have written a small program main. Okay, A equal to 10, B equal to 20. Well, I'm not following the syntax properly. It's just a description, just an example I'm showing. So here I'm writing C equal to A plus B. Now, if you look at here, this particular program, I have written some variables. I have used some operator. So your variables are what I'm talking about, operands. So whenever we are executing this program, what is saying that if this program is present in your RAM, and whatever that is what is saying here, the program should be present in your RAM. What about the data here? So here the data is nothing but the variables A, B. A consists of 10, B consists of 20. That is what is talking about data. Apart from that, operator. These are what we call it as operands. I think you know that. And then we have something called plus symbol. This is what we call it as operator. Again, we have equal to. Now, if all this data and this particular program is loaded into RAM, it becomes easy for the CPU to execute the task. That is what means in the main memory. But if you people talk about something called accessing directly from the main memory, so means this data will not be stored actually in your main memory. This data will be present in your storage device when the instructions start executing. When these instructions will start executing, then this particular data is loaded into RAM. So when this is loaded, what will happen? Your system will miss, the CPU will be sitting in an idle state. It will not be, it will have some time that it will be sitting idle, but we don't want that. And anyhow, it will somewhat delay. Remember, the delay is not in minutes or hours, it is only microseconds delay. Okay, so to overcome that, they actually developed this particular concept called as cache. Okay, so using cache, what happens to whatever the data is there, that will be loaded into cache. It is a very high speed memory. It will provide you the data very fastly. Now this will be sitting between registers, and that's why when we have seen the hierarchy in the first unit, you might have seen after registers there came cache. So we had something called registers here, and below the registers we had here cache, and then we had RAM, isn't it? Now this has come up here. Now whatever the data is required, which is most important, that will be loaded in cache. So the RAM can directly access it without any halt. So the process can start executing. Means CPU can execute without delaying or without waiting for getting that particular data loaded into your RAM. This is what the whole thing, okay, happens here. And moreover, we know that whatever the memory is provided to one process, that will be protected from getting accessed by other process. Means whatever the memory we are allocating, suppose there are two processes here, P1 and P2. And if I'm allocating a memory to process P1, whatever the memory I have allocated here, it should not be accessed by P2. It should be protected. Same way, whatever the memory I'm allocating to P2, that should not be accessed by P1. Who is going to take care of that? Means operating system is going to take care that these two processes does not access other devices. So that's the introduction part. So let's talk about here how that protection. Since I told you related to the protection part, this is the diagram related to that. How that protection can be provided by the operating system is basically there are two different type of registers we are going to discuss here. Something called as base registers. Another is what we call it as limit registers. Remember them carefully. Okay. So what do you mean by base register here? It actually, this is the one which represents the actual memory of your RAM. As I told you, there are two different type of addresses that will be generated. Something called as mm, something we discussed about logical address, and something we discussed about physical address, right? As I told you, the addresses are basically of two types, logical and physical. Now, this particular physical address which I am talking about, this is related to your RAM. Okay, and that will be represented with your base register. That RAM memory, whatever is there, that will be represented with this particular base register. And what do you mean the limit register here is nothing but the limit. Means, as I told you that every process will be allocated some memory, right? Now this will have some stages, some memory, some amount of memory. Like it is starting from so and so location. Let us suppose it is starting from location 100 and 150. From 100 to 150, we can provide the memory to this particular process. What about the remaining? Now this process, if it wants to access the memory which is located at 151, it cannot do so. Why? The range for this is from 100 to 150. So only 50 bytes. It can be anything, 50 bytes or 50 GB or 50 MB, that depends. Okay. Now that much amount of memory only this particular process can access. So that how we can come to know that only 50 means, that is what comes under here limit register. I will explain with the diagram so that you can understand here. This diagram is meant for that only, base register and limit. Now if you look at this, this is your RAM. If you observe here, this is your RAM. Okay. Now, if you observe in the first part, this part will is fixed part. This is something like, for example, as I told you, you people have 4 GB RAM, but you cannot access 4 GB. How much you can use? Either 0.38. What about 0.02 GB? Now, that particular amount of RAM will be taken care by the operating system. That is used for loading this particular RAM. Okay. So loading operating system in here, because that operating system should be present in your RAM, then only it can get executed. If it is present in your disk, that will not get executed. So that particular RAM means operating system should be present in RAM. So this is a fixed slot. We can never access this. This is only for the operating system, read-only type. And remaining memory, whatever you people are having here, this is for the different processes, what we people are actually creating it. Okay. Now here, you might be seeing some kind of addresses here, like 30 0040 42 0940 88. This. Now all these things, this is your base register. This is your base register. Okay. So this is all what we are talking about here, base register. Means your physical device, physical memory addresses are this one. These are the physical memory addresses. Okay, and that is what we call it as physical address. Logical address is different. I'll explain in the coming slide. So this is what the physical address. Now every process whenever created, let us suppose you are writing a program and you are executing it. What is the process? A program in execution. So you are executing one particular program. So that process will be allocated in these slots. These are the slots. Like from 25,000, I mean 25,600 to 30,0040 can be accessed by one process. If another process is created, that will be taken care, that will be present in one of the slots. And this will not be happening in a sequential order. Remember that. For example, you might be thinking, okay, sir, after this we have three slots. The first slot will be the first process, whichever is coming, that we are going to store here. The next process which comes, this will be storing here. And third, no, that is not the case. Remember that whichever slot is available at that time, that particular slot will be given. Let us suppose if a process P1 is coming, so it will not be stored in this particular slot. Maybe at that particular time, this particular slot is occupied by some other process. So whichever is free, there that particular process will be allocated. Suppose third slot is free, the process 1 will be placed here. After some time, this process completed and came out, then process P2 came. Then this particular slot will be allocated to P2. It's not that it will come in a sequential order like P1 should come first, P should come next, then P3. No, wherever the slots are empty in your RAM, there only that particular process will be allocated. Okay, fine. So what about the limit here? So once, as I told you, suppose okay, I have taken example here. One process came. So for that process, the base register allocated is this one. So what is the limit given for that particular process? This means how much it can access from here. What is the total we are going to get if we added 0, 4, 9, 0, 2, 4? Means from this particular location to this particular location, this particular process can access. That is this one, C1. Okay, so what about the limit here is nothing but this is the limit. It can access only these many slots, not more than that. Okay, so that is what he's saying in this particular scenario. If you want to get a more clarity here, I'll explain with a small example. Let us suppose we went for a small tour to some other location. So we already booked some hotels. Okay, so we rooms of a hotel. Now since we people are 60 members, let us suppose only 54. Our batch is only going. So how many students are there? 54. And the hotel wherever we have booked it, that can support two people in one particular room. So since we are talking about 54, so 54 students. So in one room, two. So how many rooms we require? So it's around 7. So 27 rooms are required. Apart from that, some faculty might be going with you, so plus one room. Okay, so total how many rooms we require? 28. Okay, now this is the limit. 28 is the limit. 28 rooms are allocated to Vignan College IT students of third year. Now, when we reach there, I will ask you to split into two people. I am not going to separate them. You decide which two people want to be in one room and you take whichever room you people require. So means how many rooms you can take? When you go there, he will give. So from room number 200, you can start. How many rooms you can say? From 200 to 28. So from 200 to 228 rooms. Room number 200 to room number 228. In between, any rooms can be taken. So any rooms can be taken by the students. Why? Those are the ones which are allocated to us. So here that 28 rooms are the limit. If you want to access room number 229, you cannot access. Why? That is not given to you. Your limit is still 228. That is what he is saying in this particular scenario. So whenever a process comes up, we will be giving some room number. That is a physical address. Now, till what space it can access? So that is what we come under your limit. So when you add the base plus limit, you will get the total space, how much you can use. So these are something like room number. So from room number 30,0042, 420, 940, you can access it. Apart from that, if you want to access 420941, you cannot do that. Why? That is allocated to some other person. So that is what he's saying in this particular scenario. So remember, base register is your physical address. Limit is how much space you people can access. I hope it is very clear here. Next, we have a hardware protection. Now, this hardware protection is why we are representing here is nothing but since I told you, like whatever the space we have provided, We have been provided 200 room number to 228. Now, if you try to access 229, we are actually stopping you. How we are able to stop it? How the management is able to stop here? Definitely, there is some person standing at that particular location. So whenever you come up with a particular key, that person will tell you whether this can be allocated or not. Same way here also, in this particular operating system, we need to protect that particular process doesn't try to access the memory which is not provided to him. For that, this is the protection basically we are using. It's very easy. Now I told you about logical address and physical address. I'll explain here in small, and the next slide we'll discuss in brief. Physical. Okay. So I think now by now it is clear that what do you mean by physical address? This is your memory. This is your RAM. So this RAM will have some memory from 000. This is occupied some amount of space. Let us suppose 200 occupied by operating system. Remaining slots are for our processes, different processes. Now whatever the values we have, 220, 240 or some 300 something. So all these values are what we call it as physical address. Then what about logical address? Now here CPU is generating a address. Means what does that mean? Process is getting executed now. You have written, let us take a small program. You have written a C program for addition of two numbers. Main, okay, A comma B you have taken, C equal to A plus B, you have written the code and you are trying to execute it. Now, when you are executing this, CPU will generate an address for this entire program. And that address is what we are calling it as logical address. Remember, anytime you can see only the logical address. Okay, the users cannot see the physical address at any time because that will be generated by the operating system and only operating system knows how to do that. We cannot know which physical address this particular program is going to be stored in memory for execution. No, never. Whenever you people are compiling the program and you start executing the program, CPU will generate a logical address. Okay, that address might be something like something, for example, 346. Okay, now so let us suppose the base address I am taking as 14,000 now. This is a physical address, like somewhere here we have 14,000. So that I am taking here. Now every process I told you there will be a limit, right? Now there will exist some kind of limit. Now what is saying is, whatever the address is generated by the CPU, that will be compared with the base. Okay, that whatever this, let us suppose what we have generated here, 346. Now that 346 will be compared with the base. Base is already provided from where it is going to start. Now if the base address is greater than or equal to this logical address, then you will be going for. But if the base address is less than the logical address, then definitely it is a trap. Trap means you're trying to access a memory which you cannot access. Means whichever the slot is not given to you, you are trying to access it. And definitely that we cannot do that. I will explain it. Let us take an example so that you people can understand here. I am taking here something called as 200. Okay. Then we have 220. Then we have something called 300, 400, 450, 500. Okay. It's like 500 MB, something like that. I'm representing. It's a rough figure, not specifically represented. Now, if you look at here in this particular scenario, let us suppose I am taking the base as 400. So from base 400, I can start allocating the memory. Now you people have written a program which we are executing it, right? Now the CPU will generate a logical address for that particular. Let us suppose the address is 346. Now the system, operating system already been allocated that, already been indicated or instructed that from 400 only we can try to provide the information. So here, what the operating system will do is, it will compare the logical address generated. This is the logical address generated with base. So 400 is greater than 346 or not, it will identify. Yes, it is greater than. Then that particular address will move to the next location. What is that? Nothing but 400 plus 346. Okay. Now it should be less than that particular base. Okay, this will be something like, whatever the limit is given. Let us suppose the limit here I have given as 500. Sorry, not 500. Something we will give it as 70. Means from 400 to 470, you can access the memory. Okay. Now, whatever the logical address generated here, that will be given here and it will be tallied with the base. So 400 is greater than 3. Okay, that is fine. You will go further. Here also again we need to check. Why? Because it should not exceed the limit. So what is the base we have? 400. What is the limit slot we are given? 70. So from 400 to 470 only we can try to access. But 400 plus 346, how much we are getting? 400, 346. So it is 746. Well, it's highly impossible to provide. He's trying to access a memory which is much more beyond to the limit whatever we have. So definitely what will happen? A trap takes place. Means it will instruct the CPU that, okay, we cannot allocate a main memory to this particular process. Why? Because you are trying to access a memory which is much more higher when compared to the what are the slots we do have. So we have slots from 400 to 470. Then what the CPU will do, it will again regenerate another slot. Now let us suppose this time it is generating something called as 25. Okay. Now let us compare again now. So 400 is greater than equal to 25. Is it true? Yes, condition satisfied. Then it will go. So it will not enter into trap now. It will go to the next part. Now here we are adding it. So 400 plus that 25 we are going to add here. Yes, we are going to add 425. So what is the value we are going to get? 425. This is your physical address now. Now this physical address is within the limit or not? So 425 is less than 470, isn't it? Yes, condition satisfied. Now we will be storing. So where is 400, 450? So 425 means it will be somewhere here. So here that particular process will be allocated. C1. This is the way the whole works. The entire scenario works. Now let me take another example so that it becomes very clear to you people. Okay. This time I'm taking a slot of some 14,000 somewhere here. Okay, like from here I'm talking. So 14,000. What is the slot I'm taking? 1,000 slots I'm taking. So it is 14,100. Okay, let us take I'm taking 100 slots. So from 14,000 to, okay, no, okay, we'll take 1,000 only. So this will become 15,000. So this slot consists of, what is the base we are using here? 14,000. And what is the limit I am taking? 1,000 slots or 1,000 rooms. You people can identify for your understanding, you can say 1,000 rooms. So total how many we can access from 14,000 to 15,000, we can allocate the location anywhere. Now CPU is executing one program process and it has generated a logical address. Let us suppose it has generated 346. So what is the base address we have here? 14,000. So 14,000 is greater than or equal to 346. Is the condition satisfied? Yes, it's satisfied. It will enter into the next stage. Now 14,000 plus 346. How much we are getting? So 14,346. What about the base plus limit? How much we have? 15,000. So is it satisfied? Yes. So this 14,341 becomes 346, sorry, becomes your main memory address. So it will be somewhere here 14,346. So here we are going to store that particular process. But in case, let us suppose the CPU has generated something called as the address as 1001. So CPU has generated a logical address of 1001. So 14,000 is greater than equal to 1001. Yes, it is satisfied. It is greater than. So here there will be no trap. It will again enter here. Now 14,000 plus 1,000, how much we are getting? 1,001. It is something like 15,001. But what is the limit we have here? 15,000. So you are trying to access a memory which is not in our range. What not in the range which the system has provided. Immediately a trap will come up. Okay, and trap will indicate that we cannot allocate this 15,001 slot as you are eligible only from 14,000 to 15,000 slots. So this is the way your internal memory works. Okay, and remember all these things are taking place within a fraction of seconds, not in minutes. Okay, not in minutes, fraction of milliseconds and nanoseconds time this entire process takes place. That's the reason we never come across these things. Next, we have something called address binding here. If you talk about address binding here in this particular scenario, address binding is nothing but, as I told you, we have logical and physical address in the previous diagram. So how that logical address is mapped with the physical address? Like for example, here I told you that we have something called 346, base is 14,000. So we have, this is the logical address, this is a physical. We need to map now. Then only we will get the physical address. 14346 is your physical address here. So how that mapping can be done? That is what is represented in this particular next slide. So here, basically what is saying that, as I already told you in the beginning, that is what is representing. So whenever you people are writing a program that is and storing with the .c extension or whatever, .java or something like that, it will have something called as symbolic address. It will not have something called as absolute. We actually have absolute address. This is the physical address, what you can say. But basically, whenever you people write the program and store with .c extension, that will have something called as symbolic address. Now this symbolic address, when you compile that particular program, this symbolic address will be converted into a relocatable address. Okay, remember it. Whenever you people are writing a .c program and storing in your system, maybe a C program, Java program or PHP program, that will have a symbolic address. So when you compile that particular program, that will be converted, the address will be converted into relocatable address. Now this relocatable address will be linked by the linkage editor, and that will be converted into absolute. Now this is your physical address. Now when we can convert this symbolic to relocatable and relocatable to absolute means based upon this time. It can be done during compile time, it can be done during load time, or it can be done during execution time. Now I will show you the diagram so that it becomes very clear for you how it exactly works. See, internally how your program works. This is your .c program. This is your .c program. You people are written. This is what we call it a source program, isn't it? Now what you people are doing? You people will compile that program. So here the compiler will be compiling that program, or the assembler will be there. That is what we call it as compile time, this one. So during this time, you people can try to, if you know where exactly you people are storing that particular program, you can directly generate your physical address, that is absolute address, during the compile time. But if you don't know when you're compiling the program, where that particular program will be stored, then you can generate relocatable code. Okay, you can generate a relocatable code, and that will be mapped to the absolute code when you people are executing that particular program. Okay, now first let me explain the diagram so that it becomes clear for you, so then we can understand this. So first thing, you people are writing a program. After writing, you people are compiling that program. Then you will get a .obj file. I think you people know very well. Now that .obj file will not be executed now. See, this is the process. We have linkage editor. We have an editor here. This editor will actually add other modules. You people might be installing something called as header files. That header files will be mapped to this particular .obj file. Once that is done, then that will be loaded. Means that particular files are mapped here. Now that your program as well as means which is in the format of .obj, that program and this particular file both will be loaded. And after loading, some other linkage like runtime, you people might be using some MLOC or CLOC you might be using. So that system libraries will be loaded here. After loading that, now your particular program is in your memory, then it will start executing it. Now, since I told you, we might be using MLOC, memory allocation. When we are allocating that? During runtime. So during runtime also we can link the library. Okay, dynamically loaded system libraries we have. From here you people will get that MLOC concept. It will be dynamically linked. Okay, it will not be linked statically, dynamically. When it will be executed means linked in executed time. So we have compile time, load time, execute time. So in compile time, what it will do, it will convert your program into .obj. Load time, it will try to, whatever the obj file we are getting, it will try to map the other header files which are required, statical header files to this particular program. And during execution time, if you people are using any kind of function which are required dynamically during runtime, that will be linked to this particular concept. So this much concept is there. We people are simply writing the program, compiling program, executing it, getting the output. But internet, this whole mechanism takes place. And you might have seen that how much time it takes for getting your output. 0.38 seconds, 0.22 seconds. So within that, this whole process is taking place. That much fastly this particular process executes. Okay, so this is what he's saying here. So here first, in this particular source program, we will be having something called as symbolic address. And this symbolic address, when it will be converted into OBJ, here it will be converted into relocatable address. And this relocatable address will be converted by the linkers and loaders here into your something called as absolute address. This is the way it takes place. Now, when we can convert them, it may be during compile time, it may be during load time, or it may be during execution time. So whenever you are using a dynamic concepts here, definitely we cannot get the absolute code at that time. So during execution time only, we will be getting this absolute code and we will do it up. So these are the three steps what you people have to keep in mind. These are very important when we people can do that binding. See, relocatable address is nothing but 346. In the previous diagram, I told you about logical address. That logical address is nothing but 346. This logical address will be converted into relocatable. Some values will be added here. Then that will be converted into like 14,000 plus 346. So you're getting 14,346. This is your main memory RAM. That is what we are calling it as absolute address. This is the whole way your entire system works. Okay. So coming further, give me additional 5 minutes. Okay, so this is what we already discussed, logical versus physical. I already explained your paper. So what do you mean by logical address here is nothing but the address generated by the CPU is generally call it as logical address. We can also call it as virtual address. And this is the address we can see in our program. You can type a program where you can try to access the address. But whereas coming to physical address, this is related to your RAM memory unit. And this we cannot be seen by the human. It can be generated only by the operating system. Now all the logical addresses that are generated will be placed in a logical address space. And all the physical addresses that are generated will be placed in a physical address space. So what even by logical address space is nothing but it is a set. It is nothing but a group like set, which consists of all the logical addresses generated by that particular program. Whereas coming to physical address, these are nothing but the physical addresses with respect to this logic. So this logical address will have one physical address. This logical address will have one physical address. In that way, these have been mapped. So this is the whole terms. So these are basically the terms we are discussing. In the coming sessions, when we'll discuss the main concept like paging and segmentation, then we will be using these terms. So don't get confused. Please remember them. So finally, we have memory unit. Oh, well, what is the main purpose of memory unit? It is nothing but it will actually allocate what we call from logical address to physical address we are talking about. This is the diagram. Previous diagram only, internally it will take. Like in the previous diagram, I showed you something diamond symbols within which we are actually performing that operation, isn't it? So less than or not trapping. That entire concept will be taken care by this particular MMU. Here that trapping and all takes place, this trap. Again, we have one more here now. We have seen it. So here 345. So 14,000 plus 345 if it is wrong. Who is going to do that means this MMU, memory management unit will do that. Okay. So logical address is generated by 340. So here I am taking the base register. This is your base register address 14,000. We can also call it as relocation register. See, base register can be also called as relocation register. So 14,000 plus 346. Limit already there, here only it will be displayed. So if it is less than that, well and good, it will be added. 14,346 slot will be provided. If it is greater than, immediately a trap will be generated here. Then immediately MMU will say that you cannot access. As I told you, there will be one manager. He is the one who is managing this entire concept. So here that is what is representing. So base registers can also be called as relocation registers. Okay. So user programs is nothing but what we people are creating. It can deal only with logical address. It will never see physical. That's what I am also saying. We cannot never see this 14346 address. It is only generated by the operating system. What address we can see is 346. That is logical address. Okay. So I hope it is very clear till here. Then we have dynamic loading that already we discussed, already explained you. So here dynamic, when we can use this dynamic is nothing but, let us suppose you people having something like you have written a program which consists of multiple functions like function 1, function 2, function 3. Okay. Now basically what happens when you are executing this program, this entire program will be stored in your RAM, your main memory. But when coming to dynamic loading, what happens? This entire program will not be loaded. Only this main program, what is there will be loaded. These functions will not be loaded. These functions will reside in your disk. Okay, and whenever you people are calling that within your program, whenever you people are executing a main program, you might be calling that program, I mean that function one. Then from the disk space, that particular function will be loaded into your RAM. When that function completes execution, it will be removed. That is what comes under dynamic loading. Okay, so just a small example I'll show you. Like main is there, you people are written two functions like function one, function two. So whatever main above function 1 and 2 you people are written the variables declaration that will be loaded in RAM, but these two will be located in your disk. So within this, whenever you people are calling that function 1, then this particular function will be loaded from the disk into RAM. Once it completes execution, it will be again stored back here. That memory again will be used by function 2. This is the way it actually takes place, and that is what we call it as dynamic loading. This is the diagram here, okay? So that's what represented. So dynamic linking is nothing but dynamically we people are linking the shared libraries, right? As I told you, MLF you are using, that is dynamically execution time you require. At that time, you might have to link the libraries. That is what been represented here as shared libraries, okay? So that is will be it. And when we are linking it up, we use a term called a stub. This is the stub is the one which actually links that particular header files to your program when you're executing it. Okay. And if it is executed during compile time and all, that we call it as statistical linking. So this is all for today. Okay. Thank you for watching.